Hello friends, welcome back to Digitalk and part 9 of Jboss series. In this session, we are going to cover how we can do the setup of Jboss in the domain mode, okay, which is also called a clustering mode. So we have a lot of discussion in the previous part of the Jboss, what exactly is a standalone mode, what is a domain or cluster mode, what is the difference between them, right? And apart from that, we have discussed a lot about the host controllers and then different process controllers and there are some other components of the Jboss, right? So in this session, I will explain you with the execution on the Linux machine. Okay, I have a two node of machines in Linux machine, so I will explain you step by step how you can configure the JBoss in the domain mode. Okay, so the architecture is we have a two node which is running on the Amazon AWS machine cloud. Okay, and there I will do the setup of the JBoss in domain mode. Now, before we go on the execution, okay, before that, I am going to explain you the complete step-by-step action plan, what we are going to follow for the implementation of domain mode of clustering. Okay, and there is a change in the earlier versions and the current version, which is 8.0 in the February of 2024. When we talk about the authentication from slave to domain controller, okay, so that process got changed. There is some different step for that one. Okay, so I will recommend you can just completely go through the each second of the video that I am going to explain in next couple of minutes. There I will explain the complete end-to-end action plan of the domain controller. Okay, and once the traditional action plan that we have been following till 7 or 7.4 that is completed, after that I will tell you what is the exact difference between 8.0, which is the current version of your JBoss, for the primary to secondary, or you can say from slave to domain control authentication. Okay, and but before going ahead on that one, I would like to brief you on the action plan that we are going to follow. Okay, and it is very important for you to understand each and every concept of the action plan, so that once you will go for the implementation, you should have a knowledge in your mind what exactly we are doing, right? Otherwise I can share this instruction with you and you can directly execute on the servers, right? But it is equally important for you to understand what exactly we are doing. Okay, so let me explain you what exactly we are going to follow in this action plan. So when we talk about the domain mode or cluster mode, okay, in that one of the JBoss instance is act as a domain controller, okay, and other of the nodes act as the controller, okay, host controllers, or you can say the slaves. So what does it mean? That when we have a JBoss installation in a standalone mode, okay, that time we will have only one instance. Okay, so that single instance act as a domain controller as well as the host controller, because we do everything on a single standalone JBoss instance. But when we talk about the domain mode, where we have a multiple JBoss instances across multiple machines, or you can say multiple servers, right, then we need a centralized mechanism so that we can operate and we can control all of the nodes, JBoss nodes, from a single location. For example, if you would like to do a configuration change or you would like to go for a deployment, okay, you should have a centralized point of location from where you can do the deployment, and it automatically distribute across all of the JBoss node, instead of going and deploying the application independently on each and every node one by one, or instead of doing the configuration on each and every node one by one by logging to the servers. We should have a mechanism where we have a single location which act as a domain controller, which will control all of the JBoss instances, which is also we act as a slaves. Okay, so domain controller is called as a master, and other nodes participate with in the clustering called as a slave. Okay, and when specifically when talk about the configurations of JBoss which come with the default installation, there it is defined as a primary and secondary. Okay, the configuration files are defined as primary and secondary. So primary file is defined for the domain controller, and secondary file XML file is defined for the host controllers, and it has all the configurations automatically there, which you can use as a configuration for the domain controller as the host controllers. Okay, and then once we have the slave, or you can say once we have the host controllers or the slave machines, okay, then we can create our server groups, and then inside the server groups we can deploy our applications. Okay, so let me show you the configurations. What I'm talking about is that, so this is my JBoss installation. Inside that you will see there are a lot of folders. Okay, so when we talk about a standalone mode, okay, for that you will have a standalone folder. So for standalone mode of the Jboss, every configuration is inside the standalone folder and then configuration tab. Right. So this is the location where you have a configuration for the standalone mode configuration files. Okay. And to start the your Jboss in standalone mode, you have to go inside the bin. Okay, and here you will have a script called standalone.bat for the Windows and .sh for the Linux. So if you are going to use standalone.bat file, that means you are going to use the Jboss in a standalone mode only in a single server, single instance, right? So when we talk about, we have a domain mode where we are going for the configurations in the clustering mode, where we will have a multiple Jboss node. So what we do is we have a another folder called domain. Inside the domain, you will have the same kind of a folders that you will insert the standalone. The difference is that this domain folder is specifically used when we have the domain mode configuration. Right. So here when you will see a file folder called configuration, and inside that the default file that you will see is host primary and host secondary. These two files by default you will get with the installation. So this host primary file, it is used for the configuration of the domain controller, which I have shown you here. This is the domain controller, right? So for this domain controller, this host primary file we used. And when we talk about the host controllers or the slaves, right? So for each slave, we use this secondary file because it has the configuration for the slave, and host primary has the configuration, automatically has the configuration for the master. And when we start the Jboss instance, we refer this particular file for the domain controller, and we refer this particular file for the slaves controllers, or you can say for the slave nodes, right? And now you have a liberty, you can modify the name of this file if you want. Then you can modify it as a master, like you can say there is a file host hyphen master. This is just a copy of this file, and I have renamed it as a master, so that I should know about it. Okay, this is the master configuration file. Okay, and similarly, if you have a slave node, then you can rename this file as host hyphen slave 1 2 3 4. If you have a one node, then you can make it as a host hyphen slave. But if you have more than one slave nodes, then you can rename it as a host hyphen slave 1 for the first node, and then host hyphen slave 2 for the second node. And similarly, you can define 4 5 whatever the kind of a node you have with you. Okay, and then we start the servers with the help of these particular files, right? So this is the all about the configuration of the domain controller, okay, and the slave nodes. Now if we come to the action plan, certain things that we have been followed in the previous sessions, we have to download the Jboss installer, right? And because we will have the multiple nodes now, so what we will do is that we have to download the this installer on the each and every node. So here you can see that we have a two nodes where we are saying host controller 1 and host controller 2. That means we have a two node, right? So that means you have to download and install your Jboss in each and every host, right? And if you know that the node 1 is going to act as a master, then you can rename the Jboss folder as master. For example, if you see here, this is my Jboss folder, right? But Jboss folder is inside the master. So that means I have created a folder master. Inside that I have installed the Jboss. So that means this instance of Jboss acting as a master. And similarly, you can see that I have a folder called slave. Okay, so slave is again the same, but it will give me a proper naming convention so that I can understand this is my master node and this is my slave node, right? Because it is also possible that in a single host you can have a master and you can have a domain, which is not the certified configuration, or you can say this is not the proper configuration that you follow. But if you have a certain this kind of a naming convention, then we can understand it easily, right? So download and rename the folder Jboss folder on each and every node. Okay. And when we talk about the domain control configuration, so my recommendation is first download it only on the master node. Okay, and after that add a user. This is the first thing that we do when we install the Jboss, that we create a management user, right, which will allow you to log into your Jboss console and do the admin task. So after that you have to create a user, right, with the help of add hyphen user command, which we have seen in the installation of Jboss, right? After that you go to the domain configuration folder, right, which I have shown to you some time back, and then rename the host hyphen primary file to host hyphen master.xml, right? So we have renamed this primary file to host as a master because we are going to use this file or this node as a master. right? Now inside the master hyphen xml.xml file, what exactly you need to change? You have to first change the name. Okay, here you will see a name tag for this particular, so I will change it as a master. I have changed it as a master. Okay, because I know this Jboss is going to act as a master, so I have given the name master. So this will be visible once you will log into the console. Okay, Jboss console. So here there it will show you the name of each and every node. So that place you can easily understand. Okay, this is the master and this is the slave. So first thing that you have to rename the name inside this host hyphen master.xml file. Then you have to change the IP address to the actual IP. So there is a another section called bind.address.management. So this is the management port. By default, this is the local host loopback address 127.0.0.1. So whatever the machine that you are going to install, you will have a IP of that machine. So update the IP of that machine in this particular section, right? And then you have to start the domain, and for starting the domain and your domain controller, you have to use the script domain.sh, which you will find inside the bin folder. So all the scripts are inside bin folder. So here you will find a script called domain.bat for the Windows and .sh for the Linux systems, right? So here, while starting the domain controller, you have to specify hyphen host config equal to, you have to specify the XML file which we are going to use, which we have modified, right? So this is the complete configuration of your domain controller. Now your domain controller will be up and running, right? Now we'll go for the slave configuration. So what we will do for the slave configuration, whatever the Jboss folder we have downloaded on the master and we have done the complete configurations here, okay, take the backup of this Jboss folder and then copy it on the slave nodes, all the slave nodes. Okay, one of the reason is that in the domain and slave mode configuration, we need a same admin user and the same with the same password on each and every slave node and the master domain controller node, right? So if you will not do like this one, so what you need to do, you have to do a certain other task where in the from the configuration file you have to note a security key which you need to update in each and every slave nodes. Okay, so I'm not going for that one, so I'm giving you a easy way for that one. You just take the copy of the Jboss folder from your master node after all of these configurations, copy it on all the each and every slave nodes. Okay, for example, here what I have done, I have created a folder with name slave. Inside slave I have copied the Jboss folder, and this is the same Jboss folder which I have installed on the master node, right? So what is the next is, after that, again just like we did in the master node, here we have a file host hyphen secondary.xml. So rename it as a host hyphen slave.xml, right? And what exactly you need to define in this host slave file is, because this slave node is need to contact this domain controller, right? Because when the communication is enabled between master and slave, then you can control the slave node from the master, right? So that means we have to enable this slave to contact your master node. So what we will do for that one, first we have to disable the management port, because we will have only a single management port, or you can say a single management console which we are going to access from the master node, right? So what you can do, you can disable the management port. So the default management port is 9990. So what I have done is I have changed it to 9989, so that it will disable your management port, because we are not going to access the management console for each and every standalone node, right? So we are going to register this particular node slave with the master, right? So this is the first step, you have to disable the management port, right? And second, update below parameters inside domain hyphen controller tag, and then in this particular file you will have a tag called domain hyphen controller. This is the tag you will find sorry, inside the host hyphen slave file. This you will not find this inside the master file. Okay, so inside this particular tag, what you have to update, you have to point the actual IP address of the master, because this slave will contact your master, right? Or you can say this master will contact but to this slave. So inside this particular tag you have to change IP address of your master node, right? So for the tag jboss.domain.master.address, this is a master address, right? So for master address we have to specify the port of our master node. So here I have 127.0.1 because everything is on single machine, so I have given the same port. So if you are specifying your machine IP here for where your master is going to run. So update the same IP here in the slave node. Okay, so once that is done, what you have to do is change port from 9990 if you are using different. Okay, so static discovery name equal to master, which we have given for the master. So this is the static discovery for your master node. Okay, so what we need to do is, for this static discovery we have to give the name of our master, which we have given here, right? So this is the another parameter that we have updated. Okay, and change management port from 9990 if you are using different. Okay, so what does it mean? If suppose that here what I said is that when we run the master node or any of the node, by default it run on the management port of 9990. We don't change that. Okay, and if due to any reasons if we have changed the management port for your master configuration, then make sure to change here as well, because this will contact your master node with the help of this IP and the management port, right? So if you have changed the management port here, then change here also, but most of the time we do not change it. Okay, now this is the picture or the snapshot of this domain controller tag what we have modified here. It will be like this one. Okay, so here you can see static discovery name master, which we have given here. Okay, and here we have given the master node IP, which is we have given here from the master file. And here this is the port of the master primary port, which we have inside this host master file, which is a management port. So this is a snapshot of the domain controller, which you will find inside the host slave file. And let me show you here as well. Okay, let me go to slave Jboss and domain and the configuration. Okay, and here I have called host hyphen slave. This is a file, right? And here let me search for domain hyphen controller. Okay, so this is the tag which we have updated here, right? So we have updated the name here for the master node. We have given the master node IP address here, and then we have updated the master node management port here, right? So now our slave configuration is also completed, right? So what you need to do, again you have to start the slave. So starting the slave, you have to use the same domain.sh command, and for host config you have to specify the host slave file. In the master we have given the host master file, and for the slave you have to give the host hyphen slave file. Okay, and this is the another command to start the slave node. If you have not modified the address here, then you can specify in the command line as well, right? But most of the time we update in the configuration file, so this is not really required. So you can use only this command to start your slave. So once you will start the slave, you have to make sure that in your logs of the slave you are seeing this message: connected to domain controller at remote host this and this. So if your configuration is correct, right, then if you see this message in the log file, that means your slave is now able to contact your domain controller. And after that, once you will log into your domain controller console, Jboss console, there you can see the master as well as the slave. So similarly, if you have multiple slaves, copy this master Jboss folder to each and every slave. Okay, and do follow the same configuration what we have done here, and then just start the slave with the help of this command. Okay, and make sure this message is showing there, right? Okay, so this is the traditional way that we have been following till 7.4 version. Now let me come to the 8.0 beta version, which is released in 2024. Okay, and let me show you what exactly is the difference between them. Okay, if you will follow the traditional way for the domain controller setup or domain mode setup using the earlier way, then it will not work, because authentication method has been changed. So now what is changed is security subsystem, which was already depreciated earlier, and from Jboss 8.0 beta is completely removed. So security subsystem was earlier removed, but it was not removed completely. Now from 8.0 the complete security system has been replaced with the new one, right? So for the authentication from your slave to your domain controller, you have to define the configuration inside the Electron subsystem, right, for secondary host authentication with the primary. That means from slave to master node authentication you have to define inside the electron subsystem, right? So what exactly you need to follow for that one? The first step is same, you have to define a name, okay, in the host slave file. The second important point that is required for the authentication is you have to add this particular section, okay, below this electron 18.0 line, okay, in the host slave file, and this will create a authentication sub module where you have to provide the authentication username. This is the user that we have created, Jboss, with the password jboss123. So authentication name, you have to provide the username that this user should be exist in the both master and slave, and the credential you have to specify it here, right? And rest you have to copy paste just exactly as it is, okay. And third configuration is when we go in the domain controller, okay, let me show you what we have configured inside the domain controller. We had given the name of the master node, we had given the IP address of the machine, right? That means IP address of the master node, right? And then we had given the port of the management master node server, right? These are the things that we had updated there inside the domain controller. But now apart from that, from 8.0 beta, what you have to do is whatever the authentication module that you are going to define here, for that whatever the authentication configuration name that you are going to specify here, like secondary hyphen hc hyphen auth, this need to be defined inside the remote tag. So inside the remote tag, what you will define, authentication context equal to, it is the same what is we have defined in the authentication configuration name here, right? So now what will change, this domain controller, you have a remote, this remote descriptor will be changed with this entry. This entry will be added there, and this entry will be referenced from this particular section which you are going to add inside this particular line in your host slave file. So this is the configuration you have to be done for the authentication. Otherwise, once you will go to start your slave, then it will not able to connect to the master, and then it will always prompt you or give you the error, the authentication exception or authentication exceptions, right? So let me show you the complete end-to-end configuration now to you. Okay, so let me take you to my machine. So this is my Amazon AWS console. I have two machines are running, right? So what I will do, I will log into my first machine for my domain controller setup. Okay, so this is my first machine. Okay, and let me log in, and default user is EC2 in the Linux. Okay, okay, I have given the wrong username. Okay, so EC2 hyphen user, then I will log in with my password. Okay, and then I am going to install inside the Oracle user, so I will switch to Oracle user. Okay, let me try again. Okay, so now inside U01 I have a folder called Jboss 8. Okay, and if I go inside Jboss 8 folder, let me show you the location because okay, so I have downloaded my Jboss installer inside the U01 Jboss on the both of the machines. Okay, you can easily download it from the Red Hat EAP, and then you can place it on machine. If you would like to know how to download, you can search for the download EAP. Okay, the first screen you will get the Jboss enterprise application platform download, which is developer.redhat.com. Here you can see that the first one is that this is the current version. You can click on download. Okay, so once you will click on the download, it will redirect you to the login screen. So here you can, if you don't have account, you can log in with Google, Microsoft, your GitHub account, or you can create a free account from here as well. So once you will log in, you can download easily and you can place it on your servers. So which I have placed it here, right? So now my current folder is U01 Jboss 8. Okay, and so first what I will do is I will first unzip the JDK. Okay, because this is the Jboss 8, and for Jboss 8, which is the current version, the minimum JDK supported version is your JDK 11. Okay, so these files are not required to me. So what I will do, I will remove the unwanted file. Okay, because it unnecessarily take the space. Okay, and let me remove it. Okay, so now we have you can say a tar z file, right? So I will extract it tar hyphen xvzf and the name of my jdk file. Okay, this will extract the jdk folder here, which is jdk 11, right? So now you can see that I have a jdk folder, right? So what I will do is, instead of using the same name, what I will do, I will create a soft link for that one. Okay, so that I am going to use the soft link inside for the installation of the jdk. Okay, why we use the soft link, that I have explained in many videos which is on my channel. Specifically, you can go to the jdk upgrade session. Okay, you can search for the jdk upgrade on my channel, and then you will see the complete details why we create the link for the jdk folders. Okay, so now we have a jdk. So what I will do is, now I will export the java home, right? So java home for me is u01, and then Jboss 8, and then jdk, right? And then let me export path as well. So path equal to, which is same, u01, and then jdk, sorry, Jboss 8, and then jdk, and then bin, right? And then colon path. This is to export the previous path settings, whatever is there. Now if I will run the Java version, okay, so now you can see that we have the Java 11 version is there, right? So now what we will do is, inside the same, I will extract my Jboss folder, right? So this is a zip installation. You will have a graphical interface installer as well, which I have explained in my earlier session, where we have discussed about the installation of Jboss. So what I have done, I have downloaded the zip folder. So zip folder is just, you can download and you can unzip it, and it will create the zip jboss folder for you. So now you can see that it is extracted. So my jboss, you can say, is also installed. If I go inside that one, you can see all the directories are here. So now what I will do is, as I have explained you in the action plan discussion, I will going to rename my this folder with the name of master, because this will be the master folder for master domain controller. So I have renamed it as a master. Okay, now what I will do is, you have to go to inside the master and then bin folder. The first step that what we have seen in the action plan is, we have to create a user, admin user, right? So for that one, you have to run the command add hyphen user, which is inside your master bin. So first it will prompt for the kind of a user that you are going to create. Give the option A, because we are going to create the management user. Then you have to provide the name. So I have given the jboss, and then you have to give the password. So I will give jboss123. Okay, yes, and then jboss123. Click enter. Okay, this is correct, yes. And now you can see the user is created, and this is the location and the files where this user is added. So we have added a admin user, okay, with the name of, let me write it here, jboss slash jboss123, right? This is done. So now what we have to do is, we have to go inside the configuration folder. Okay, let me go back, and then let me see, right? So here I will go to inside the domain folder, and inside the domain I will have a file folder called configurations, and here I will have a file host hyphen primary, right? Because this is the primary, this is the domain controller. So what I will do is, I will modify this host primary file as host hyphen master file, right? So this is going to be have my master file, which which will be used to start my domain master. Okay, so now I will update the configuration inside my host hyphen master file, right? So what exactly I need to do here is, I have to change the name, right? And then I have to change the management port, right? And then we are going to start the master host, right? So let me open my host hyphen master xml file, right? So here you can see that at the top the name is as primary, right? So what I will do, I will modify it as master. Right. So this is the first configuration that we have done. We have where we have modified the name. Right now we have to change the address of my management. So this will be the IP of my machine. Right. So you can say here this is the default. Right. So what I will do, I have to mention my IP of the machine. So my private IP is this one. Right. So I will change this default address with my actual IP. Right. So jboss.boin.address.management, I have updated my IP. Right. So we have updated the name. We have renamed the file. Inside that we have changed the name and then we have modified the address as well. Now we have to test the server domain controller whether it is coming or up or not. Okay. So for that one, what I will do is I will go inside the bin folder. Right. So here we have all the script that we use to start and stop the server. So I will run the domain controller with the help of host-master XML file. Okay. So I have to give the dot slash and then domain.sh. Okay. Now you can see that it is starting. Let me see if it is getting started or not properly. Okay. Right. So we can see that host controller configuration file is used domain.xml. Okay. So now you can see that this is started. Right. So now what I will do is I will try to access and log in to my domain control console, whether it is allowing me to log in or not with the help of user that we have created initially. Okay. So now let me log in to my domain controller console. So for that one, I will take the public DNS of my machine, right? And then I will give the management port and then the console. Okay. Okay, so this is saying not secure. Why it is saying not secure? Because it is not configured with the SSL. It is prompting me for the username and password. So let me log in with the Jboss and Jboss123. Okay, so now you can see that we are able to log into the domain controller console. Okay, and here you will see the different kind of the configuration. So what's right? So once I will go inside the runtime and the host. Okay, here you can see the master. Right? Why it is showing this master? Because we have updated the name inside the host-xml as master. So whatever the name that you will define in the here, it will be reflected here inside the runtime host and your host name. Right. So now we will go for the configuration of the standalone, or you can say that not standalone, for the slave node. Okay. So once we will create the slave node and we will register with this domain controller, it will be visible here as a slave. Okay. Similarly, if you will register the multiple slaves, all the slaves will be registered here. It will show you here in the same console. Okay. And by this way, we can control or manage all of the slave node which is running on the different server or machines across the cluster in the domain mode from a single console, and this is called the domain controller. Right. So now the first part is completed. Right. So now what we have to do, we have to do the configurations of the secondary node. Right. So now what I will do for the secondary node is, first I will bring it down. Okay. And what I will do is I will go inside the Jboss 8 folder. I will create the master, the backup of my master, because we have to copy the same Jboss installation in each and every node. Right. So what I will do, I will create a master.tar file. Okay. And same master.tar file I am going to copy to my each and every node. So I have, in demo purpose, I have one more machine. Right. And let me check the IP of that machine. Okay. The IP of my second machine is, okay, let me reload it. Let me resign. Let me go to EC dashboard. Okay, and let me click on instance. Right. So this is the second node, and the IP of second node is this is. So now what I will do is I will scp master.tar file to my Oracle user, which is on this, and path will be 001. Right. And it asks for password. Okay, let me give the password. Okay, you can now see that the file is copied to my second machine. So now let me log into my second machine with the help of public IP. Okay, let me go to the session and let me give the connection as 5, keep alive so that it should not time out. Right, accept, and then let me log in as EC2-user logic 123. This is the password for my EC2 machine, and let me go to Oracle. Okay, and there I will give the password for the Oracle user. We go to U01. Right now here you can see that we have a master file. Okay, so I have some old installations here. So what I will do is first I will move this master file to inside my Jboss 8 folder. Then I will go to Jboss 8 folder. Okay, there I have so what I will do, this is not required, the installation is not required because we have taken it from the master node, so this file is not required. Right, so same way, just like we have done the node 1 domain controller, first we have to install the JDK. Right, so let me untar the JDK first. Okay, this JDK you can download from the Oracle website from edelivery.oracle.com. Okay, and there you can create it with the help of by creating a free user. Okay, you can create a free user there. Right, so now it is done. So let me extract the zip file. Okay, maybe it has not been extracted properly. So what I will do is let me remove this one and again try to extract, unzip, and then let me see why it is giving error. Okay, it is giving, okay, disk full. This is giving me the disk full error. Okay, so that means I have some disk space problem here. Okay, so let me first clean some disk space here, and then we will go for the installation. Okay, so I have deleted some unwanted files. Okay, so now let me unzip it again. Okay, let me replace it if it is there. Okay. Okay, now you can see it is extracted. So now first I will remove the unwanted files. Why I am removing is that because I have less disk space I have taken on the EC2 machine just to save my cost. Okay, that's why I have to make sure that I'm doing the cleanup properly at the time. Wait, so now I will extract XVZF to the JDK folder. Okay, and now you can see it is extracted. So what I will do, I will create a soft link, right? Just we have done the primary node, and for soft link for the folder 11, right? This will be name of JDK. Then I will export my Java home, which is U01 and then U01 plus JDK, right? And then I will export path as well, which is U01 slash JDK slash bin and then colon previous path, whatever is there. Right, let me check the Java version now. Okay, so okay, it is pointing to 18091. Okay, the reason would be I have given that is inside my the Oracle and dot bash profile. Okay, so what I will do, for some time I'm going to make it comment, right, and then I will run my bash profile. Now I will export my Java home again. Okay, this is equal to U01 and then sorry, I'm giving the wrong path, my mistake. I have Jboss 8 folder, and inside that I have a JDK, right? So that commenting inside that bash profile is not really required. Okay, I was giving the wrong path. So export path equal to u01 Jboss 8 and then JDK and then bin. Okay, so let me correct it. Let me take the previous path as well, whatever is there. Okay, now if I check Java version, it is 11. Okay, so first let me revert back the changes that I have done in the Oracle my bash profile. Okay, vi dot bash single profile. So what happened? cd home Oracle pi profile. Okay, it's not allowing me to do the vi because of the some permission problem maybe. Okay, sudo is not found. Anyway, that is not really required. So what I will do is now I will go inside my u01 and then I will go to my Jboss 8 folder, right? And here we have this is not allowing me. Okay, let me exit this one. Let me log in again. There is some problem. Okay, and now let me go inside u01 Jboss 8. Okay, so I don't know what happened. Anyway, so we are there. So what I will do is first I will remove this unwanted files now because this is not required. Right, so now we have JDK installed. So first I will extract the master folder which we have copied from the primary server. Right, now we can say we have a master folder and inside that we have a installation. So now what I will do, because this is a slave, so as I have explained in the action plan, we will rename it as a slave. Right, so now it is with the name of slave. Let me delete the master tar file. Okay, so now we have JDK installed, which is JDK 11 for the Jboss 8. Okay, so now again I have to export the, because I have logged in again, so I have to export it again. So it's u01, right, and then Jboss 8 and JDK is my Java home, and then export path equal to u01, because I have exited from the shell. So every time you exit from the shell, you have to export the variable again if it is not defined in your bash profile. So I haven't defined there, so I have to export this again, right? So this is JDK and then bin and then colon dollar path, right? So now if I see the version, it is 11. Right, so now go inside the slave. Okay, now what is the configuration for slave is, first we have to rename the configuration file, which is the host secondary as to host slave, right? So now let me go back to the domain folder. We are inside the slave, right? And now here we have to go inside the domain folder and then inside the configuration folder. Here you will have a host hyphen secondary file, right? So we will rename it host hyphen secondary host hyphen slave dot xml, right? Because this is my slave node. Now what I need to update inside my slave file is, which we have shown here, you can disable the management port. Okay, by disabling you can change the port from 9990 to whatever you want, etc. Okay, so let me rename it 9980. This is the first change that we have done. Now inside the domain controller tag you have to go. So let me go to the domain controller, right? This is the domain controller part, right? So here static discovery name equal to primary by default. Okay, because we have modified the name for master from primary to master, so I need to give it as a master, right? And then what I need to give is, I have to give the address of my primary domain machine, which is we have specified here, Jboss domain master address, right? So I will put a colon here and then I have to specify the port of my master machine. So what is the port of my master primary machine is, this is 172.31.41.120, right? So now you can see that I have given the Jboss domain primary address. Okay, primary address, that means the address of my domain controller, right? And then the port we are using the same 9990, right? Because same we used for login to the console as well, right? 9990, this is my management port, so we are not going to change it. Okay, if you will change this port in the primary host, then only you need to change it here. Okay, but most of the time we don't do this change. Okay, so now we have modified this as well, and we have modified the name as well. We have validated our master port as well. So this configuration is also completed. Now save and exit. Okay, if you see the difference between host secondary and the backup file, slave file that we have created, you can see here the port, we have changed the management port from 9990 to 9980, and here we have changed the name from primary to master, and here we have changed the address, we have added the address as the address of our primary machine. This is the only configurations that we have done, right? So this is done. So now we have to start our slave controller, but before starting the slave controller you have to make sure that domain controller is up and running, because your slave is going to contact your domain controller, right? So for that we have to make sure our domain controller is running. So what I will do, I will come here and then I will start my domain controller here first. Okay, right, so now you can see that our domain controller is up and running, and let me revalidate the login as well. Okay, let me, right, so our domain controller is running, right? So now what I will do is I will try to start my slave as well. Okay, so for that one I will go inside the, let me see where I am. Okay, okay, so I have to go inside the bin folder of slave, right? And here I have to give the command to start my slave, right? And with the help of my host hyphen slave XML. So let me copy it, okay, and let me paste it on my slave node, okay, inside the bin. Okay, so now if I will run this will not able to connect to your secondary, because I am using the 8.0 beta, and as I have explained in the detailed action plan, for the way of authentication from slave to master has been changed, and for that you need to do certain additional configurations in the host slave XML file. Okay, so let me execute this and let me show you. This will give you the authentication error. Okay, because this will not able to connect to your primary node. Now here you can see that unable to connect due to authentication failure. Okay, so this is the problem you will get in 8.0 beta version, current version. For that what you actually need to be done is, which I have explained here. Okay, for that you have to follow 3 steps. This is the same step that we have done. We have added a name for the slave, right? This section you need to add after this particular line. Okay, that means in the electron subsystem, and inside the domain controller you have to change the remote tab, or you can say the remote descriptor, by adding this value, so that it get referenced from this particular section, right? So to save the time, because we have already running with a long video, so I already have this file placed there. So what I will do, I will quickly show you the configuration. Okay, what exactly we need to change. So we have a file host hyphen slave dot 8.0 which is modified. So in that file I will show you that configuration what we have done. Okay, so slave then hyphen 8.0, let me do it more. Okay, so now if I show you the configuration, initially at we have given the name as a slave, right? This is the configuration that we have done. And now when we talk about the rest of the configuration, okay, what I said is that you need to add this particular section after this line, right? So this is the line, right? And after this we have to add this section. So all these lines are added. Okay, and marked as this line has been added, this line has been added. Okay, so these are the section or the lines that we have added after this particular electron subsystem. Okay, so now this is done. And second, when we talk about the host controller section, so let me go to the host controller section as well, and let me show you how to change the remote descriptor for that. Okay, so now this is the domain controller section where we have updated the name earlier, master, and we have given the port IP of our master node and the management port, right? So here this remote descriptor modified, and we have added this particular section as well, right, which is defined here. And why we are adding this? Because this authentication configuration will be referenced from here for the authentication, where we have defined the username Jboss and our password Jboss123. So this is the configuration that you need to define when you are going to use the latest 8.0 version for the authentication from your secondary, or you can say from slave to the master node, right? So now if I will if I copy this host slave xml.8 file to host hyphen slave file, right? And now if I go back and try to start the node now, okay, now you can see that it will be connected to your master node, and that we will verify from the console as well. Okay, so now you can see that it is registering the server nodes. Okay, and now you can see connected to the domain controller and on the particular IP and the port, right? So that means this slave is now registered with the primary master node, right? And our primary master node is running here. Okay, now you can see that the message is displaying here as well. Okay, and now what I will do is I will go to the console and I will access the console, and I will show you now the mask that slave node should be visible here as well. Okay, so now go to runtime, inside go to host. Okay, now you can see that this is our master node which is running on your primary node, and this is your slave node which is running on your secondary node, or you can on the slave node. Similarly, if you have a multiple slaves, you can do the same kind of follow the same configuration for each and every slave, and once it is able to connect to your domain controller, every slave will be visible here, and from here you can control all of the servers from a centralized location, and that's why it is called a domain controller, right? So now in next video what we will do is we will remove the default server groups and default servers. These are the default. If I click on master and if I click on slaves, then you can see there are server 1, server 2. These are the default. Okay, so master I have already deleted earlier. So this is a slave. Okay, here you can say server group, right? These are the different servers. Okay, and these are the inside your server groups. Okay, if I come here, you have a main server group, you have a other server group, right? And what we will do is we will remove all these default server groups and then the servers which is there inside the default server groups, and then we will create our own server groups, and then we will create our own servers, and then we will deploy the application on the nodes whatever is there in our custom server groups, right? Thanks for watching this video and stay tuned for the next video.